Alright, so today I'm going to be going why I use rear focus. Some people call it back focus. I've been using it for so many years I can't even remember, but I've always used it and referred to it as rear focus. I've been using this god for over 15 years probably, back when we were still shooting film. And there's a couple major advantages, and I will also tell you that one disadvantage, or one option that you have where you really should use the front focus. But for 99% of the stuff, I just think if you're learning photography, you are much better off to start off learning to autofocus using the button on the rear versus the shutter button, and I'll kind of go over why. So the way this works on the front of the shutter button is it does a couple of things. First, it kind of when you touch it, it kind of wakes up the camera and turns on the meter and the LCD or any functions on the camera. If you don't touch it for a while, to save power, it will go to sleep. So first thing you're doing is waking up your camera. The second thing you're doing is initializing its ability to get an exposure, or your meter, waking up your meter. And so it's getting an exposure for your meter, and whether you're looking on the back of the LCD or looking through the viewfinder, you're going to see that. And the last thing you're going to do is it also activates your autofocus. And so the way this works is you tap and hold the button down and your camera will autofocus. If you want your camera to stop autofocusing, like let's say you focused on something and you want to recompose, and I'll get into recomposing later, but you want to recompose, you need to hold your shutter down halfway and keep it held down, and your camera will eventually, it won't autofocus anymore. It will know that you want to stop, and then you can take your picture. The problem is, this is what happens. People press this down, hold it down halfway, and instead of just continuing to press down and taking the picture, they lift up real quick and then press down. And when you do that, it zips out of focus and doesn't work. So the reason that we're going to switch to the back of the camera and use a button back here to focus is it's an independent control versus taking the actual picture. All right, so you don't have to worry about holding a button halfway down and lifting up or pressing the whole way down back here. So on a Canon camera, I'll just show you this one. This is the actual autofocus button. However, I will tell you, when they first came up with this, Canon had it way over here, or maybe that was Nikon, but one of them had it way over so far that your thumb could barely get to the button to actually hit it. So they put like a little software thing in there that you could swap. Well, that swap is still in there. So I actually use this star button as my autofocus, not the autofocus button. These are the two main buttons I'm controlling. So I'm controlling my focus point here, and this is my autofocus. So I actually don't use the autofocus on button there. So just to know, it's kind of convoluted, but you can go in there and you can swap these as to which one you want to use. So when you make this your autofocus button, all it does is autofocus. So if you focus on something and you know you're focused and you don't need to track, meaning the subject's not moving and you don't need to track it with autofocus, you can let go and then take your pictures. So you can recompose and move your camera around. Your focus is never going to change until you hit this button again. All right? Your front button, your shutter button up here, does not affect the autofocus. You've turned that off and said, hey, I don't want that to autofocus. I want one of these two buttons back here to be my autofocus. So just like if something, let's say you're shooting sports and you want to track an image, so you're taking a picture, you're holding down this button, you just jam it down with your thumb, continually focus on your subject. Then when you want to take a picture, you're just going to hit that button as well, where your thumb is continuously smashed down on that button, so it's going to keep tracking no matter what, unless you lift off. So it's independent control, and that's what I really like. So we'll switch over here to Nikon. So Nikon, once again, we have our shutter button here. It works exactly the same as Canon. You've got this, and this is your initially controlled shutter button, as well as autofocus. And let's find the back of a camera here. And if you want to autofocus, Notice this is your autofocus button. Can you switch on Nikon? I can't remember, but this is the closest one, so it's most likely the one that you're going to want to use anyways. So this is your independent control for using rear focus. So the only time I've ever seen somebody needing to use, and I know people that still like using this as their autofocus button, but not many, is sports photographers. A lot of people, if you have 2 or 3 cameras around, they'll put like a wide angle or a 50, and if a play comes all of a sudden really close to you, you don't really have time to do anything but pick up your camera and kind of point it in the right direction and hope the camera focuses on the subject. Well, it's really hard to hit the rear focus button when you do that. You'd be surprised, like picking that up and trying to hit the rear focus button and then take a picture. So in that one case, when you have it as just kind of that quickie camera, it's better to have the shutter be the focus as well. So you're just going to turn it on, smash that button down, and then hopefully you've gotten your camera up quick enough to get that picture. So that's the only time that I've really found that having the shutter on the front is beneficial. There might be other ones, but just none that I can think of at a moment now. Okay, so let's assume that we're looking through our camera right here, and right here where this green dot is where my camera focus point is. Our subject in this case is right in the center. So whether you're using the front shutter button or the rear shutter button, you're going to focus and take the picture. There's no recomposing, right? Because we want our subject to be into the center of the frame. So taking the picture with your subject right in the center of the camera is not always the best compositionally. So this is just a simulation of how this would work inside a camera. So what I have is a layered photo here in Photoshop. And so we have the viewfinder in the photo. So what do I mean by recomposing? So normally right here is where your camera is going to focus. It's either going to focus in that square, or if you use an expanded focus, it might, anything within that circle will focus on. Well, of course, on this image we can see it's just the background. So if we were to focus, it would focus back here on the sky, not on our subject. So we will assume that we want to focus on our subject, not the sky in this image. So you have 2 choices. One thing is there's a focus point right here. So I come and I can turn that on. So I've circled this focus point. So I can move it from here to here and then focus and then just take my picture. So the problem with that is you have to go into your command dial and move your focus point over to here, which can take a little bit. All right. I usually do that if my subjects are moving around. So let's say I have this horse and I want the horse on this side of the frame. I can move my focus point over here, and then as the horses are moving, I can track them with my camera, always keeping this focus point on this horse. So I'm moving along with the horse, and that way I'm keeping kind of the horse on this third or that focus point right here. Never, if I was to focus now, and my focus point would be on his butt. Well, I don't want his butt in focus. I want his head in focus. So I'm moving my focus point. Because it's moving, I don't have time to recompose, meaning focus here. So to recompose, what I would do is, let me turn this off. I would move I take this layer and I'd put the focus point right on her head. I would focus and then I would recompose in my camera, right? Since I'm using rear focus, I can just let go of the button, right? It's not going to refocus. So this is what I mean by recompose, and this is why I love using the back button, because it's a lot of times just easier. My subject's not moving or going anywhere. So once I focus and recompose, I'm good to go. I don't have to worry about my focus. I can just shoot unless I hit something with my hand or I move. Then I'll need to refocus. But this is a real quick process, and it's pretty much quicker than moving your command dial. And unless you get really good at it, then you'd be surprised how fast you can move it. But just in general, I'll do this recompose thing. So I'll move this over, focus, let go of the focus button, recompose, put her in the area where I want, and then I can just take pictures, as many as I want, and then as soon as something changes, I can refocus, recompose, and I'm good to go. Where in the horse that was running, this horse is always moving, so I need to move my focus point. In this case, if I leave it in the center, it's not going to work. I can't recompose. I can't take this and then recompose, because the time I get back here, the horse is moved out of focus again. So I need it to track. Alright, so see, in this case, I'm going to take this focus point or this focus point, and I'm going to put that on the horse's head. If I was to try to focus here and then recompose, the horse is moving. By the time I got it recomposed, it's going to have moved, 10 feet, and that's not going to work. So you're going to, in this case, moving your focus point, and it doesn't matter whether you're using the front shutter button or the rear focus, you're always going to have that shutter held down. So it's going to be continuously tracking and focusing in this case. So hopefully that's a little bit on the difference between moving a focus point and recomposing from the center focus point. Most of the time I'll do this if basically subjects aren't moving. I will recompose. However, sometimes it needs to be really accurate. I'll move to a specific focus point as well. So hopefully that's a little bit of information on go ahead and try to use rear focus as well as move your focus points. This is like a key element in photography. You will never be really good until you're good at this. I can just tell you from experience. Being able to do things quickly without thinking is key. You need to be able to just move your fingers and hit the buttons and move to these focus points, or quickly focus and recompose to get things done efficiently. So hopefully that was helpful. Any comments or questions, you can leave those below, and don't forget to subscribe.